Okay, so here we go. Welcome. I will just put the question out there. We let the conversation loose around it, and then when it's 2 minutes, I'll tell you to switch to the next one. So first, we will talk about positionality regarding urban transformation, regarding our excursions. What is your perspective on positionality?
So for me, positionality comes from where you are located at or situated at, where you come from. That include your background and how familiar you are with the city and how strange it's for you. Not just from your lived experience, but also what you've learned about it or what you've learned about cities in general. So
Okay.
it's an insider outsider where you put yourself.
Okay. What
For
about
me,
Deepali?
Kathmandu is my insider. I have an insider position when it comes to Kathmandu, but with Heidelberg and Delhi, I'm an outsider. So
Yeah. At the
I
same,
think,
yeah.
yeah,
No, go ahead.
uh, I would say for me, positionality would mean, like, I don't know the exact meaning, but it would mean taking a stand on something, some kind of what position you take a stand on. For me, it would be that way. Like what Sue also said about like belonging to a place or what position you take for anything.
Okay.
So it could be any approach or any culture or anything, like any stand on anything,
Okay.
values or vision or system, anything is for me is the positionality in one way. And again, another way is a reference, exact like locational reference,
Yes.
which she already mentioned.
Yes, and I think from the social sciences approach, positionality also refers to you acknowledging when you're standing from,
yeah.
and it's also there on a sense of limitation on where you are standing at conditions your perspective, conditions your opinion, and in a certain way leads where you're standing at. Curation.
Uh, Curation is how you create a story, like how you tell a story, which could be anything, uh, in any form, like in it could be a visual form or in you see things, you hear something, it could be a story, it could be written format, it could be anything. It's anything which could be told in any way.
It's a way of
Uh,
storytelling then.
it's a way of storytelling, how you curate anything, and it could be, I think, any object or anything physically or not physically also could have can have one curation, like, and everybody would have a different version of it, even even if you all see it in one angle, but my curation would be definitely different from her curation, for example, or any of us, because it comes from background also, what my past experience has led to, how I curate something today. So
Yeah.
yes.
What about you, Suv?
For me, similar along the lines of what Dipali mentioned about it being telling story or something. But I would be more focused on the word intentional when it comes to curation, because when somebody curates something, they have this particular intention on how they organize the whole thing, whether it's an exhibition or space or like even stories. So what comes after another? So there's a linearity to it, and there's an intentional intention to the linearity. Regarding urban spaces and all, I recently I read this book. I have read this book called Rebel Cities, and it from David
Harvey,
Harvey,
yeah?
and it
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it talked about how cities like they're always separated into section. Like this is where the marginalized community live. This is where the upper rich, people who have access to everything live. This is where all the shopping malls are. So it in that way, I could see how city is a curated space, even relating to like Kathmandu itself, from the ancient times, we had this center square, the War Square, belonging to the palace and aristocrats, and the farther you go from the center, it means the poorer you are, socially you are in a lower class. So that's
Yeah,
what.
Think
there is.
I'll just add one more thing. In a
Mm,
way, it could also be like from if we see from a government perspective or from cities, it could also be a selling way. How you
Mm,
sell things is how you create like a city, Indian city, you can say it could be like in a particular way. It has been curated in this way. So we
mhm,
can relate it in terms of cities, urban spaces, etc.
of course. Conflict.
I don't know, conflict to me only comes to that shop again.
To
Uh,
watch. Oh, yeah.
tobacco shop we went to.
yeah, yeah,
Our decolonial guys.
Uh,
yeah, yeah. The colonial
yes.
flag.
Okay, yeah.
Uh,
Confrontation. Yes, I
Hmm.
guess I mean, on that note, it has to do a lot with exclusion. I mean, it's just like places you are not allowed in, or places that are built on your not allowingness to go into. That has to do a lot with what conflict is in the city.
Yep. And
like,
also uh, a bit with disagreement itself,
Mm-hmm.
and why there's this alarm into it. Not just from the people who are experiencing that disalignment, but from outsiders like us,
Mm-hmm.
where we would be disagreeing to certain rules that itself comes into conflict, maybe with the how it.
Yeah, and I think in a way you also have to allow in their negotiation. I mean, just like not necessarily in the tension of it, but in the possible ways of coming through
oh,
with it. Negotiation is that ideal space where you can do something about it.
Yeah,
yes,
basically.
because yeah, yeah. So
No,
continue.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just telling conflict and negotiation together. For example, this Diwali celebration for us, particularly government has put a ban that you shouldn't firecrackers at all.
Mm,
But there is a clear conflict on what the government wants versus what the people want. You will still see the ban, and there is continuous meme going on whether you should follow the Supreme Court or whether it's about our festivals or
mm.
the question mark of. So
Yeah,
it's
so the
about people
pollution
over the
problem
government.
that is going right
Where
now
is
in
the
Delhi because
negotiation
of that.
happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's crazy because as much as you like global south that and stuff, that is New Year's in Berlin. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, like that is literally it's
Yeah,
fucking chaos. And yeah, I mean, just like that kind of has to surge as well in the city, you know, I mean, just like that does has to have its space. And it's a way of
yeah.
contestation as well. On that note, I would go then to boundaries.
The what?
You
Boundaries.
you.
I think I got caught off.
Okay, boundaries. What would be understood by
Boundary.
boundaries?
Mm,
Just a second. Hi, Anita. So we
I,
are underway with a kind of Jeopardy way. I am
rapid
just
fire.
filling out concepts and we are just relating them with urban transformation, with our excursions, and seeing what comes around like from the discussion of it. And we were just getting into boundaries.
Boundaries could be, I don't know, one way to put it would be distinctions, like one class of society versus the other class. Like you have it could be the physical boundary, like physical distinction, like housing class, like the way houses are built, or like something like that. Or it could be intangible boundary, like just the quality in which people live, or like you see slums at one side of the city, or you just see it Matlab, there could be visible as well as invisible boundaries, like distinctions, I would say. And I'm thinking.
For me, I don't know if it will actually relate to cities, but I think boundaries. When I think of boundaries, I also think of safe space, in a sense that this space that you feel your home, even if it's not exactly your home. So if the moment I am inside the periphery of Tamil, I just feel home. There's nothing now. I don't have to rush. Now I don't have to worry about anything. But just beyond that, like 5 steps beyond that, I'm rushing. I'm kind of like getting anxious.
There is a level of
Oh,
privacy to that,
yes.
no?
Yeah. So yeah. So
But
belongingness.
in contrast to that, it could be questioning on who's right to a spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is
Belongs
a
to.
boundary. It could be a ward bound. Yeah, like even if you draw a ward boundary, but like water rights or some kind of rights, who has the ownership to it? Ultimately, it put questions on whose city or who should it belong to. So question of yes, no, fight, conflict together comes with boundary, I feel.
Okay, on that note, again, when we talk about boundaries and who's in and who's out, I throw to you power.
We can just like from the boundaries, like the accessibility, just as a keyword, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good one. Yeah.
Okay, power. I think it comes with boundaries. It would be connected, no? So if you have
What's the
power, you
boundary?
can.
Yeah.
If you have
Create
the
boundaries.
right to enter, also depends on like who you belong, like who you identify, or like what part of the city you identify with. Because if you, I don't know, some cities, for example, there are areas that you feel like, okay, you belong there, so you have the power to go there, and other districts, they are sort of restrictive. There's also racism there. There's also sort of like crimes happening there. Maybe there are no lights, there's no safe infrastructure. So women would not go there because it's unsafe. So like it's not only according to who's walking, who's in the city that has power, but also that space.
Belongs in a way.
Yeah, that space could contain power. So if this was a dark area, that space would have more power than me as a woman, maybe walking alone in a dangerous area.
Overpowering. Yeah, that's a good, yeah. What about you guys?
Power could be like, I think same thing, like authority, the word would come to me. It gives you the, uh, again, same thing, like who you decide who will live, who will not live. You, it could be positive also. On a city, it could be positive as well as completely negative. But
Okay.
again, puts a lot of question on city, like who does a city belong to? Or any space, in fact, what Anita said. Uh, like dark space, or even the street, who question.
And
Okay.
also,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think like when it, like just like Deepali said, authority. I also feel when we talk about urban space, city and city council comes to larger extent when we talk about power, because at the end of the day, they're the one who's making new rules every day, and the whole struggle between public and the state on which rule to follow and if not, if if that's feasible in that particular space or culture. Like just like Dipali mentioned before, that the state has banned firecrackers, but it's part of the culture, and so the struggle of power itself is there
Of course.
between what you want and yeah. So
Okay. Transition
inevitable.
in urban transformation.
um I think transition is always I mean we do say it's like more like change or process of changing, but I always feel it's more like accepting that the change is happening. So
Mhm.
you ready yourself to, embrace it.
It's something
Uh,
smooth.
yeah,
That
something.
person. Okay.
Yeah. And it could relate with, I don't know, just the new technologies coming into the city from abroad, like how s- in we're all moving towards smarter cities. So there's this whole
Mhm.
infrastructure that's getting transitioned or transformed. People and their awareness and how they use these technologies are getting, and we're slowly adapting. So yeah, transition is also adapting
I
to.
would only question the smoothness there. I think when you speak about transition, I don't know why I go immediately towards gentrification. Uh,
Mhm.
how that is also a process of
Resistance.
transition, of resignification of space and urban space.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of transforming it into something. It can be commodifying it. But as well, there are also other possibilities with gentrification. I've become very much questioning the absoluteness of the negativity of these concepts. I mean, just like somehow you kind of have to look for a space of possibility in this.
Yeah.
Would you say then it's like spatial or like a like transition in a spatial way, sense, but also when it comes to technology, I don't know, like I don't want to say temporal necessarily because everything changes within time,
Yeah.
right? But just on another level, like one space can change or can have a transition with, I don't know, architectural changes or technology or whatever, but also like the whole city can have a transition towards gentrification. Or what do you
Yeah.
mean?
Like a project. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Commonality, it's possible. Just yeah. And, I like that. Okay, gating.
Can you repeat it?
Gating, like gates.
Like gating.
Gating.
Boundaries.
Yeah.
Very tied.
Isolation.
And accessibility comes there,
Mhm.
prohibition comes there,
Privacy, yeah. Living out.
privacy, and
I,
also power.
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
And
also
me,
isolation.
for me, Delhi,
Like
to be honest. I
restriction.
mean, and not keeping out Heidelberg or Kathmandu, but the gating is such a trait of Delhi as a city. I mean, you are so constantly confronted with gates that it kind of becomes a landscape, funnily enough, as well as in London.
Uh,
It's yeah, it's related, but it's also an emotional space.
mm.
It
So
relates to
basically,
belonging.
keeping strangers out.
Mm.
I had to think of like in when we were at the school and they were closing the gates because there was like this procession of the politicians. So
Oh, sure.
Or keeping
like
strangers.
yeah, it was definitely power, but not
Yeah.
only the power of the gatekeeper in that sense, so but also it can show it's political gating, can be political.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good example.
Yeah.
Margin.
It has something negative to me.
Yeah, it's kind of outer.
Yeah.
Mm.
It feels
Periphery.
like the big wall, like the Roman wall, like there's nothing behind. So we don't care about what's behind. So if you have a margin of a city, you don't really care about,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you would make a margin. No, I don't know, for example, when there were the Olympics in Beijing, I think, apparently they were just setting up walls along the highway so the athletes would not see the slums next to the highway. So they would
Wow.
make a temporary margin to ignore the ugliness, so or the problems of the city to make a better appearance outwards.
It also has then like to do with leading from what you're describing. I mean, just like from directing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that is completely ignored, like I feel, or what Anita is saying directly. Even in Commonwealth Games that happened in Delhi, same thing. Like that you do not look after. Something you just want to shoo away. Is again, for me, it's also a negative term only. Like you do not want to see it at all.
I get
Like
it.
the city to me could be a showcase, but then you leave the margins, like something like that.
And how would that differ from border?
I think with margin, it's like even when you think about the paper margin that we leave before we type, like it's because we know that it's gonna probably get destroyed, something that we could discard. So the whole reason we keep margin is because we leave that space for destruction. So even in the city,
So I think.
spaces, whatever is marginalized is something that we don't give enough shit about, if I can swear. For
Yes,
it to be destroyed. So that's why we have that.
Okay. Border.
I think, like for me, margin is sort of a space. Like it could be like a space which is ignored, but a border is something which divides the space. It's clearly a division of like margin versus the mainland.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Border is an element. I mean, it's like
Yes,
a
border is
very
like an
thing.
yeah, it's like an element.
Yeah, like
And it's
it
sort of,
basically helps to keep the margin far away from the center.
I think a border is also in some ways either meant to cross or not meant to cross, but it's also more, I don't know, like you want maybe to cross the border or you may not want to, but with a margin, you tend not to want to go there because of whatever reason. So as Deepali was saying, like it's more of a space. The margin would refer more to a space, and a border is just a, I don't know. It can be a line, it can be a
Something,
gate, it
yeah,
can
yeah.
be something physical, it can be intangible as well. Borders, I don't know.
Also, I feel borders are more like, it's a geopolitical distinction. I don't know. This line, like line, while margin becomes more like it's something that community itself decides on its own than the government or something doing, like it comes up on its own, like more intangible and spatial than while border becomes a line or a wall or just a indication. Yeah, that's geopolitical indication of change space.
Okay, on that note, here's a jump. Membrane.
A membrane.
Yes.
With my
Membrane.
biology class. Cell membrane.
When I think of
It's
city,
a
I think
layer?
of facade in a way. I mean, just like
Yeah.
a membrane is, it is a border of sorts, but it's more, it's a surface. I mean, just like it's a superficial quality of things.
Like the outer layer,
Exactly.
maybe.
The exterior layer as well.
I think what a city wants to showcase, again, the same thing. Like for me, membrane is something, for example, you go to old city, everybody went, the city wanted it to be like that. You have old facades kept, old something. You want the feel of being in an old town. Whereas if you move to newer part of the city wants it to be built by Corbusier or something. Like it's how you want the city to be.
Yeah, to look at least.
Yeah.
For me, it's
Yes.
something alive, a membrane, because if you come from biological, like the biological notion, it's something that is alive in some way, and there's like a fluxus going in and out. It's nothing like a wall restricts in people like crossing or things flowing. So a membrane can either be like one way only or both ways, depending on the structure of the membrane. So it's not
like metros.
Yeah, or people in general. So, or like if you have a harbor, I know, for example, in the architecture, like the facades, when we speak of that, with the rising harbors and the more commerce that was going on over the seas, that the cities would pep up or beautify their facades on the harbors and make them pretty, because that was the first thing that people see when they came from overseas or from.
Yeah, including the trade hubs as well. Yeah.
Okay, emotion and affect. That is one term.
It should not be one term.
Yeah,
it's
I get
different
it.
things. So.
Let's start with emotion.
Okay.
I think it's a very political instance. I mean, I when I think of emotion, I think of a very vulnerable thing. I mean, just like a thing that is like a very effectivist thing coming from a very pure and just like human instinct.
Raw.
But then I think, for example, also of the Altstadt, and I think also of the historicity of places, and just like this is always set to establish an emotional like filiation with a place. And in a similar way as you're speaking, Anita, like this beautification and these facades, it was to generate an emotion when you were getting there, like, oh, this is a place, you know, something of the sort.
So emotion in general is like a long-term, profound feeling, whereas an affect is more short-lived. So if you have, for example, memorials or places to remember events, historic events, these would create a space of emotion. If you, I don't know, in Berlin, for example, I think this was also like the controversy, because the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin is actually a very emotional place for remembrance, but people would use it for advertising, for self-fiction in some ways. So there's this question of how these places are lived.
Tons of selfies, yeah.
Yeah, and affect. I don't know where in the city you get affects in that way.
I think everywhere you can feel the effect, no? Because like if there's a traffic, then it affects everybody. If the city center gets blocked, then you can feel its aftermath till the periphery, because everybody gets stuck, everybody gets blocked, and the whole city halts. There was this incident, I don't know if it was in Bangalore or somewhere, that or Kolkata, that there were a traffic jam for 3 or 4 hours a month back, and they actually had to order food in the middle of the jam. Like,
wow. So would you say that the amount you get affected in the city, like the more you get affected by noise, by visual things, would you say the city is more exciting or more loud or more chaotic? Or on the other hand, if there were no effects at all, would you say this is a boring place? Or what does affect mean?
Yeah. So basically, the city, I feel it has to have something going on, you know, because so that everybody has something going on. And that's what city usually do, you know. There's always a traffic, there's always this noise, there's always construction happening, protest happening some other place, somebody doing a bargain on some deal. because and that's what makes city city. Because there's
Yeah.
always stories happening, and the effects are the aftermath of these events. And
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well,
it does not have to be like exciting all the time. It could be very annoying for people.
no,
Like
affect, I think, definitely does speak as well about something that can be very, yeah, about an impact that is not necessarily positive.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like lots people find the whole chaos in the city very annoying and all. They find cities not chaotic, chaotic. But then it also depends on people.
Okay, guys, since we have 2 minutes left, I'm gonna say we did a good
Yeah.
job. It was good. Okay, now we chill. Now the Jeopardy is over, and